Now be wondering who exactly is Senator Robbie Mills, the 56-year-old Republican from Henderson. And how will Mills being on the Republican ticket affect this governor's race? Well, I spoke to UK political science professor Dr. Stephen Voss, who helps answer those questions and more.
State Senator Robbie Mills.
By choosing a state senator, Cameron took a relatively predictable and safe route.
Dr. Voss says Cameron didn't go for a surprise candidacy here.
Cameron has wanted this race to be about national hot button issues, about the cultural changes that have been happening in the 21st century that aren't terribly popular with a lot of Kentucky voters. So he's stressed the positions that Mills has taken in the past on legislation that involved cultural conservatism.
Mills is well known for his legislation to ban transgender girls and women from playing on sports teams that align with their gender identity, which passed in 2022. This year, he backed a bill that bans TikTok from state devices and a bill that made hazing a felony. And most recently, Mills defended his vote for Senate Bill 150, which bans gender-affirming health care for transgender youth, among other issues.
Where Kentuckians tend to be conservative, Mills helps punctuate that, helps reinforce it. His cultural conservative credentials allow Cameron to reinforce the conservative message that they've tried to make the campaign about.
Mills also has the ties to Western Kentucky that Cameron lacks. But Dr. Voss says Beshear's campaign will highlight Mills' role in a controversial teacher pension bill.
One of the main points of attack on Governor Matt Bevin was his role in trying to adjust teacher pensions, pensions for teachers. So by having Mills, somebody who was part of Bevin's effort on pensions, joined to the Republican ticket, it allows Beshear essentially to relitigate the 2019 campaign, which he won.
Now, Dr. Voss says while the Republican campaign will primarily focus on the national hot-button issues, Governor Beshear and Lieutenant Governor Coleman will take the opposite approach. He says they'll focus on in-state issues and highlight the Beshear administration's responses to natural disasters and the COVID pandemic.